И прежде чем мы начнем, хотел, чтобы вы подумали и немножко...
So before we begin, we would like to remind you about
выполнять свои
this
задачи.
SOC is performing its tasks, but it doesn't perform other tasks.
Приходят к вам в голову.
What are the first ideas that occur to you? So obviously, somebody comes up with a model, the functionality model, which is related to your particular SOC. You may have a very impeccable management alert handling process or threat hunting, or somebody may be just starting that way in the beginning. And the analysts launch the scanners manually, and later they will be sending these reports to IT. So the question here is, why would we still see the cases when SOC actually looks like, an emergency center, like we are reacting to the leaks from sewage pipe, but it does not look like a state-of-the-art cybersecurity tool. We spent millions on alert monitoring, but we forget about the vulnerabilities. So I would like to say that we need to establish the Vulnerability Operations Center. And why we think it's just it's another way of security, but not just another acronym. I'm Kirill Diomin. I'm in charge of the SOC project, and I'm specializing in different technical solutions in SOC. So recently, my team and I have started using different tools, forward strategies. A lot of them are still about exploiting the vulnerabilities, and not just zero-day vulnerabilities, but very well-known vulnerabilities. So the question is, how come it happens and these tools are still effective? So here is the attempt to answer this question and understand what we need to do about it. So I would like to back it all up traditionally with some statistics from the verified sources. There is a great variety of vulnerabilities, and as soon as the new exploit comes out, all of the bad guys pick it up like a nice hot dog. A research is turning into a powerful weapon, which is spread all over darknet. So all of the groups take it. And what's important here that 40% of all of the attacks start exploiting some vulnerability. 40%, I mean, 40% of all of the confirmed incidents is the result of an exploit working with a well-known vulnerability. Seems like it accounts for one half. I would like to show you some stats with the vulnerability chart. And you should read this. It's not like in 2025 there are almost 25 new COEs. Here's the cumulative effect that takes place. And there are 213,000 vulnerabilities that are active, and this number is constantly growing. We have a lot of patches for a significant part. Not all of them actually fit the assets that you have in your infrastructure, but it's a stable thing that a significant part of these vulnerabilities already have exploits used in real attacks. If you haven't patched something, you can't avoid them. It would be logically to ask what happens to the scanners. Seems like almost everyone uses them. But what seems to be the problem? The scanner doesn't have a magic button which we can click and make all safe. The scanner actually looks like a costly generator of long PDF files that you put on your shelf. like technical documentation, and it just provides you data, provides you information, which is very dubious and questionable whether your scanner actually fits the need of your assets. Maybe you've already replaced a lot of Western systems by the homegrown ones. Maybe you have not done it with the scanner and you keep on using some foreign tools, or use an open source scanner. Even if you have a few of them available, it does not mean that the vulnerability management works in a comprehensive way. Seems like that there's a bunch of non-consolidated data that you have to do something about. VOC or VOC is not the new approach to patch management. It's more about the transformation of the cybersecurity culture in a company. Like back in the day, cybersecurity was singled out as a standalone service, the cybersecurity service, and then SOC, SOC. So the modern environment requires establishing a standalone unit which would specialize only in vulnerability management. So Vulnerability Operations Center resembles SOC, showing that it combines processes, people, and technologies, a triad which comes out with the result. So the emergency is crucial here, and we merge together people, processes, etc., and we result in additional added value. So we add value by combining these things in a VOC. So what would be the basic tasks the VOC has? We would like to start with the foundation. The foundation, which would be a deep inventory of assets, a deep one. It's not just you list all of the MDBs and everything that lies on the surface. No, I'm talking about a deeper one, when you just go through and plow through all of the IT, when you just check out all of the distant corners and foxholes and checked your contractors and subcontractors at the peripheral. The second thing is the way you operate with the data. It's not just installing a patch, it's not just coming up with a list of hosts with CVEs, but it's more like why we actually install this specific patch. When you know exactly why we breach this gap, why we cover this, why this is the priority at the moment, why we plug this hole, and why do you think this error in business logic is far more superior than the highlighted incidents. And you can't avoid working with the metrics because you need to measure the efficiency. You need to have the metrics collected. That's desirable. So what would be the part of VOC? In actual fact, there are two big blocks that add to each other. The first block is actually targeted at detecting vulnerabilities.
When we have multiple scanners and when you are certain about the expertise of those scanners, you did not just bought the cheapest one. You actually asked the vendor what's inside. Do they have some kind of vulnerabilities that do not have CVOs? You asked the vendor how they prioritize these different vulnerabilities and why they included specifically these ones there. So even after patching, it is important to test and see was the patching actually effective or not. And here we can have different offensive techniques, breach attack simulation, CPT, and so on. And these solutions, usually we're talking about exploits that have some kind of interesting procedures in terms of vulnerability exploits And you can double check, you can see, okay, so the scanner shows that there is an exploit, and maybe you can actually abuse it and use it. Maybe we have some compensatory measures to mitigate it, or maybe not. And finally, it's to provide additional benefits to bug bounty people. There is also ADP for additional program. And anyone who finds an exploit and vulnerability can report this. Second unit is it's all about asset management. It's all about the control. It's not just when SOC asks you during the middle of the night, what kind of host is this? And you have no idea. But when you can actually pinpoint the owner of that host, even during the night, then it works. It is very important for SOC and EVOC to communicate and cooperate with IT departments. So if they just upload information and they say, okay, so you have some kind of incident, and maybe we can isolate it. But VOC, is even more tighter integration with IT. And it's so tight that the key figures must be part of VOC, and they have to take decisions together with information security engineers and officers. And finally, to test and control the potential attacks. So now let's just to be on the same page and to... So VOC is not to replace SOC, it's in parallel. VOC is not a part of SOC, and it does not answer directly, it basically answers directly to director or CISO. So if these are two different people, then they have two different areas of responsibility. So VOC is not a scanner, VOC is not a technology. VOC is a triumvirate of technologies, people, and processes. At the same time, SOC remains. It still remains the same operating center that's basically responsible for everything from monitoring, for logging, for pinpointing new attacks, for checking incident response, for preparing for new threat detection. They have their own infrastructure. And obviously, it remains key element. It's easier to protect the infrastructure which is not full of holes, so that SOC does not have to catch up. If the infrastructure is full of holes, then obviously, even if you work with the most expensive vendors, they will have to catch up, because you have to protect something which is completely not defended. Analysts are overloaded, and you pay way too much money to protect what cannot be protected. Strict separation of roles between VOC and SOC starts at the moment when VOC becomes a separate unit. Basically, if SOC are eyes and ears, VOC is basically the immune system that repairs all the problems in your body, in your organism. It doesn't catch criminals. It just builds good, resilient perimeter for SOC to be certain of. If you implement VOC correctly, it's not a competitor. It's not a competitor. It's just a department, just a unit that bolsters everyone's efficiency. And obviously, if those are two different units, two different departments, they have to coexist. It is very important to integrate data between VOC and SOC. And in this case, here is an example. Imagine an aircraft that has all of your assets, and it takes your infrastructure through time. And this trip, this voyage, It happens in different media. Turbulence can happen. And many different things actually strike against the hull and wings of this aircraft. Those could be black swans and DDoS attacks and real threats and so on. Each wing has their own different ailerons, different ways for them to work. And it's very important for all the minor elements to exchange information correctly, provide additional context, provide notifications so that SOC would notify VOC about potential exploits. And if VOC finds a new vulnerability, they would tell SOC about this. Maybe you should have better, more stricter correlation rules, and so on. And obviously, this can be all done by SOC, but then it will be overloaded. So the main point here is the cooperation between SOC and VOC, and to bring all of your assets without any downtime, without any problems, without any unnecessary landings, to a point in time which is your goal, and to do that in a secure way. And to bring not only just critical assets, but also, let's say, second and third-rate assets, which will have to be in the infrastructure. And maybe some other assets, which will be from your vendors and sub-vendors. Obviously, you have to take care of them too. What would be the set of tools and tech stack for VOC? Here, I want to split it into several categories. First, those are different scanners, not just vulnerability scanners, which go through the network and containers and different clouds and different branches. Those are everything about internal perimeter. If we are talking about looking around and logging different tools for outer perimeter, then obviously there are external and extended EASM. External and extended, basically, obviously we don't have real classical EASMs. They have extended functionality to go through darknet for leaked databases and so on. So these are extended EASMs. Second group are different offensive tools, which provide expertise but also allow to potentially exploit vulnerabilities which were or were not detected yet. So you have CPT tools and different open source frameworks, and we all know about them, and it's very easy to Google them. Code analysis tools. If you have developers in your company, obviously implementing of CS does, they will monitor not what is being developed, but what kind of IDEs are used, what kind of tools are used. It is also very important. Next is asset management. These are very basic solutions, but obviously you have to use something here, and this list can go on forever. It is important for this activity, for this asset lifecycle to be transparent and easy to understand, so that shadow IT would not appear in your organization, and then you would not have to actually go and look for it. So now we have all the tools, but now here's the pain point. Different scanners in different systems, those are in different formats. Like in CM, incidents come from different sources in different formats, and all that have to be unified in a way so that will be a single data model and normalize them. How to do that now? So we would like to believe that there should be a tool to do this in a centralized way, so that all the tools can be plugged into a single system, and you would have the single window control. You could have You could set specific tasks. For SOC, maybe you could exchange data, and you would see this VOC magic, which we are talking about here. What this platform would look like? Here is an attempt to demonstrate the key functionality of this platform. Obviously, we have to bring together all those disarray elements. It's not just a congregation of data. We have to think about risk factors, we have to think about different metrics, and look for potential implementation mechanisms with certain business risks. Maybe we have to work on it from ground zero, from scratch. And obviously there is no such approach, there is no such solution on the market in a ready-made way. So what do? Do we create it from scratch? And it takes a lot of time and it's very expensive. And many parts of this functionality can be found in different vendors. So the question here is, what can become this platform? What can be this next-gen VM, maybe VRM, which are popular in the Western countries? Maybe these can be used. So this is one of the solutions. So how do we answer this question? Well, we have to say that this is an open question. It will be probably answered by the market, by customers, when they will have a more mature position and set specific requirements to vendors. And then vendors will create their own centralized platforms based on their ecosystem. Because there are different ecosystems. For example, Russian vendors' ecosystem are very diverse and they have multiple tools which are already integrated. And you just have to add just some small elements of functionality there. And then this kind of platform will be online. What will be the... So we already spoke about VOC and COC collaboration. It's very tight, but when we're talking about IT department collaboration, it's basically a monolith. VOC cannot work without IT. No way. And the reason is that if we say, let's patch some business important asset, then IT would tell you, oh, it works, so don't touch it. But we have to understand that this is a trap. If you say something, well, if it works, don't fix it. Obviously, it's a trap, and if this kind of approach is prevalent, and if you have to change as few things as possible, let's not improve what we have. Basically, that's not a very good approach, and it will bring you nowhere. Vulnerabilities will remain and multiply, and the infrastructure will be filled and riddled with holes, and obviously this is not the way to do. So in VOC both works with IT department, but also it should work with outsource partners, because if you have your vendors, maybe it will be important to control both your perimeter and perimeter of your vendors. Maybe they were hacked just a while ago and they have their data and their assets, but they also have your databases. So maybe you have to control that too. Now the question, when do companies need SOC and VOC? Obviously, these are two parallel departments. What should be implemented first? How should we build them in tandem, and so on? If we're talking about small and middle enterprises that usually do not even have MDR or service provider, then you probably should start with the fundamentals. This will be a good set management. Because when you build this, it will be the first brick of your future protection, of your future defense, which later on can be called VOC. And then it will be make it so much easier for SOC. Maybe you'll have your own SOC, maybe you have a vendor SOC, doesn't matter. So first you have to have VOC, it will be a mature approach. Even big companies will not be able to do it from scratch if just throw money at it or if they want to do it in a week. Obviously, it's much more complex about this. Say you have a new vendor and a new platform which was introduced, brand new system, and if your system, if your ecosystem does not have basic processes like asset management, it will not work. Even if the brand new system is very good, you have to have your own system ready for it. Next, VOC becomes important when you cannot control these vulnerabilities manually, when you understand that the company needs a dedicated vulnerability officer who will do this. When you realize that you have multiple vulnerability officers and you have some fundamentals and you have SOC operating, then you can start building VOC brick by brick. Okay, so this was all about theory and concept. Now let's go to practice. Example number one. When SOC suffers a lot because the infrastructure is riddled with vulnerabilities. So suppose we have a company with moderate age of SOC, it has some basic scanners and solutions. They do not have a dedicated vulnerability officer. Sometimes they work with vendors, sometimes they do something. Next, exit utils and in summer 2024. SOC knew about this vulnerability and they thought, well, we probably will be able to detect this vulnerability using our rules. A few weeks after this exploit was issued, then SOC detects some kind of activity, potentially threatening activity. So exploit was reported and then malicious users started to use it. SOC tracks the activity, but it was too late. It was not initial access, it was much later when C2 was already hacked through tunneling and service downtimes happened. SOC guys obviously needed forensics help. Forensics people came and helped to respond. But anyway, in-house SOC was heavily criticized from the top managers, because if they knew that this could happen, why they didn't do anything? But what could they have done if the patching was planned in a month, but nothing happened now? So we can assume, obviously, when we talk about history, it already happened, but suppose how this situation would potentially develop if they had VOC. So VOC learns about the situation, they report this to SOC, and SOC people understand, okay, we need some kind of SLA, what kind of, we need to prepare for it. We create a number of rules, maybe we try to exploit this vulnerability through different tools. Maybe it's relevant, maybe it's not. Next, best case scenario, it will be closed, not in hours, maybe in a few days, maybe half a week. And the whole situation will be completely avoided, where SOC was to blame wouldn't happen. And even now, you cannot really call and say that they were to blame. It's very controversial. Case number two. When vulnerability management already exists in some form, but SOC, there are some problems. It doesn't really operate that well. Here is a good example with reload Apache. There are two vulnerabilities from 2022-2024, and they are actively used by malicious users, even though there are available patches. But still, the company that has multiple services, including Bittrex, we all know about Bittrex. They have their own information security department, they have scanners, they do all that, but because SMDB system was not complete, so to say, it did not have all the necessary elements. They had the vulnerability, they had the exploit, and the incident was escalated to the top management level. People started to panic and they wanted to get people from SOC. Analysts from SOC came here and they read the technical documentation that they have to protect Apache, whatever it takes. They created a number of rules to rewrite that functionality. They help with profiling for non-typical traffic and so on. But because it was quite problematic to monitor access log for Apache, for errors log, as a result, what happened was the cost of SOC increases. And the reason is that a lot of EPS that come from Apache, they generate a lot of false positives. As a result, the customer pays or overpays for hybrid SOC because they do not have asset management and they do not have correct vulnerability management. If they had those stages covered, it would have been easier. So what do? We add EASM, we look for perimeter, we detect all the vulnerable and reload services, we patch them, and we make the IT department do their job. And during the next reporting period, SOC can see that the load decreased, they remain all those rules, but they do not have to additionally monitor those reload servers. And the final cost also decreases. It wasn't too much, but because of the decreased expenses on APC, it was lower. And finally, a case 3 for NTLM hash that can send some SMB to SHAR. We were able for this. We had a few rules for it. We checked all the rules and we are waiting for the result because there are all the reasons to believe that it might be used in the nearest future. So what can you do even now? Just a plan for you ahead. The patch is available, and the simple solution is to patch it. If for some reason you have a lot of legacy services, legacy equipment, and sure, there are third-party micro patches, not from Microsoft, but from different vendors, and obviously monitoring. And you can also try test an open source framework, different databases, just to take a look at how this vulnerability is being exploited. So what can we say about VOC and SOC and different formats? We understand that SOC can be in-house, it can be service, when it's completely outsourced, including MDR, or it can be a hybrid version where you have a stack of solutions you use here, but you also have a team of analysts, which is an outside team because it's so expensive to work here. But does it work with VOC? Both yes and no. Obviously, it's quite easy to build, but when we are saying, so we need a service VOC, how can we, our dear important company, give away the patching to an outside company which knows nothing about our company. Obviously, business will not allow this. And this can be approved by only some brave company that has cloud infrastructure. It's not brick and mortar, it's basically online company, and provider allows them to push a button and some kind of magic would happen. But that basically is it's very dubious. Not everybody would agree to this. And obviously there is a hybrid version where a part of the solutions stay on your side, as if this is your VOC. But if there is something expensive and not everybody can afford your own EASM, or maybe you want to outsource vulnerability scanners, and obviously you can do this. You can optimize your CAPEX expenses. You can have a subscription plan, and basically you get the same result as if you had VOC in-house. The main point here is that you need a dedicated person who will do this job. It's not just outsourcing one provider to one outsource, and then you outsource something else to the left, something to the right. You need a person, need a mediator, a middleman, who will connect the results of outsource VOC and outsource SOC with your IT department. And in this case, it will be a working solution. Next, let's talk about Russian realia. And if VOC is relevant now or not. Quite a lot of VOC we can see here in Russia during the last 5-7 years. We buy different solutions for VOC, and it is quite popular here in Russia. And it continues to be more and more popular. But at the same time, SOC is response, it's reactive. Obviously, this is contentious, but let me explain. When you build SOC, you want to prevent potential attacks. You do not cover problems, you are getting ready to respond to them. So, but that's not real preventive activity when you just build a fence around your infrastructure. But VOC is exactly that. When you protect your assets and basically make your assets invulnerable. Next point. In the Russian market, there are quite a lot of different scanners and VM vendors, quite a lot of different tools. But as we know, it's very diverse and it's not unified under a single umbrella or maybe a platform so that SOC could get there and get additional context and so on. Next, regarding the people, what kind of people and experts do we need in SOC? Who do we need there? Do we want to work there 24/7 or is it 5/2? We need someone who will work with scanners. We need someone who will analyze vulnerabilities. We need a patch manager, and it's better to have maybe a dedicated person who will have mediating processes between IT departments and them. When I was preparing this presentation, I went to our HR department and we looked for a very well-known website for vulnerability officers, for CM managers and so on. If you just look them online, it's quite a lot. But if you add additional criteria so that it's not just somewhere on the CV, but you actually have this line in your profession, then not so many people. And when you want to hire someone from VM so that they can do this in a professional way, it takes 4, maybe 5 months to go through different interviews, and maybe something goes wrong. Maybe the person does not have enough competence and skills, so it's quite rare.
Okay, So,
Что в этой ситуации может
what
сделать ЦИСО, как он
can
может прийти
CISO
к
do
белому управлению
to
уязвимостями?
end up with this
Какой-то прям how-to guideline
incident
довольно
management,
тяжело, но можно
a
наметить
well
верхние уровни
profound one?
стратегические
We
пути,
can
которые
appoint the top
ЦИСО может
level
посвятить свое
strategic
внимание.
pathways
Делил
that
их на два блока. Это
CISO
то, что можно
can
сделать внутри своего ИБ-подразделения
point
или
out.
службы,
That's
и то, что
what you
можно
can
нести
do.
наружу. Само собой, начинаем, опять же, с asset
And
management.
that's exactly what we are going to start with. We start with the asset management. That's the basis of the future VOC. We do the inventory of the tools we have. We can buy something, we can extend the license, we single out a standalone vulnerability officer position because someone dedicated has to operate with that. And we do the first how-to instructions for IT managers. And the second task is more political, that CISO is supposed to do, is to shift the focus. Without patching, everything will disintegrate because patching is not a threat, but it's a guarantee. So then they will have to come up to see the business and explain that patches are important. You need to tackle the patches and involve new people into creating them. So if you have SOC and the first line and the second line, somebody keeps on developing, so it's impossible to keep the person in the front line. They keep on learning things and they would like to move on. So very often these guys would like to try themselves doing something new. So if you don't have this need covered in vulnerability management, you can use these people right there in vulnerability management. So in the end, I would like to wrap it up with a quote of my dear colleague, which he said, well, brainstorming session, please stop devaluating vulnerabilities. That's what he said, because when you look through another scanner report with many pages, you start turning a blind eye on most critical vulnerabilities, the red flags. You just perceive it as simple text, which seems like you are not supposed to do anything about it, but that's a trap. VOC, that's all. That's VOC. A few VOC options. Choose the one that's most suitable and comfortable for you. VOC and COC, VOC and SOC are not competitors. They're the two sides of the same coin which fight vulnerabilities and turn this into a process. So, I would like to point out the fact that you need to start this path to VOC step by step, slowly. Then you'll end up with the security that we have been dreaming about, but it's so hard to achieve. Thank you very much. Your question, please.
Вот молодой человек в зале здесь был, да.
Here's this gentleman.
Давайте подождем микрофончик, честно говоря, плохо слышно.
With the need to use the microphone so that people online can also hear questions. I'm Daniel, hello, and I have a few questions to you. You mentioned a few times that VOC is not equal VM. It's not equal to VM, but you also mentioned vulnerability management. In many cases, as far as the inventory management is concerned, what would be the principal difference between them? Well, it's more about the terms. When we say VM, we mean there's the process that is done by VOC in monitoring and other things that SOC does. VOC is also brings the vulnerability management to a principal new level. All right, then. So I think that's about the definitions rather. But the second question, what would be the metrics to evaluate VOC's efficiency, apart from just simple numbers? It's the time of the incident closure, MTTR, mediation time, etc. These would be the indicators. Last question. You say that VOC is needed just to reduce the load on SOC, but at the same time you prescribe a few VM-related tools to VOC, but they are very, very targeted. SAS, DAS, SCA, they are ACA-embedded tools, and you need to acquire high-level competencies at expert level. So it seems like that there is misalignment. So wouldn't that be logical that VOC would be made of a few departments like VM, AppSec, DevSecOps, whatever? When we talk about the next level, like in SOC, we have analysts on different lines, and we have a group, forensics, incident responders, a few groups. And right here in the developed VOC, there may be different departments as well. But I think all these tools somehow or other, the results of their performance should be taken into account by VOC. Because I'd say that VOC without IT is not a working story. So the use of the SAS, DAS, and the integration with the secure development is one of the things that VOC tackles. So in this case, VOC will exist at the IB level, because IB will not allow to spend a lot of money hiring a few experts. Cybersecurity will be created. When it's created and when it's working, it seems like that you don't have any problems. I mean, it's finding the specialist who does the AppSec, DevSec, VOPs, and does VM. I don't think you have such experts. I think there should not be just one expert. It's either very rare or they just don't exist. Then you need to hire an entire team, in this case, a few people. Well, we just need to check how it works in practice, because I think in different companies it will be done in a different way, and they have different starting points. They have experts everywhere, but the process of their interaction is not well balanced, and you need to find some resources in the market and hire additional people. Okay, thank you. Yes, another question, please.
Включен, да? Ага. Да, добрый день, коллеги. Марков Олег, компания Газинформ.
I'm Oleg Markov from Gazprom Service. I'm in for cybersecurity and IT. After your presentation, I think that this topic is very popular. It's been promoted a lot. There's been products on vulnerability detection, that's true. But in your presentation, you mentioned that companies are supposed to establish yet another department, just like VOC. They don't have too many SOCs in place, I mean SOCs. They don't really know what to do with SOC, and all of a sudden they need to have VOC. I'd be able to mention a few other ones that they need to create. Active Operations Center, Compliance Operations Center, IOC, Incident Operations Center, many other ones. So I think this approach will disintegrate everything, and people will not just have enough resources on cybersecurity. The managers, the business managers would just say no. It's discussable, of course, but I think there are people here that are not integrators and they wouldn't want to sell their products, but are really experts in defense of their companies. They know that they can't approach the management of their companies with such question. They would refuse. That's just a comment. And the second thing you said, that you don't know which platforms it will be deployed on. But it's been 10 years in the Russian market that such platforms do exist, including the platform of our company, which is the platform for information security, processes management, management of the documents, management of HR compliance, assets and vulnerabilities, incidents, etc. All of these things are combined there. It does exist. So please check it out on the internet, those people who are listening. You may easily find such solutions on the internet, but they cost money. They're not that cheap. I think this is it. It's just a remark. Well, I really wanted to comment on that remark. The number of departments in the company is defined by the needs of the company. Compliance operations center that you mentioned in big tech do exist and they function well. As for uniform platforms to combine solutions into a big stack, it's a topic for discussion. That's true. It's a thing of an argument. Definitely, some of such solutions have already been included into one product, but if we are talking about vulnerability checks and the perimeter monitoring, does not always combine everything into one platform. There are lots of things included in the ecosystem of different vendors, which I mentioned previously. But if we have the list which fits your organization, just by going there and picking it out of the box does not always work. You just need to brush it up and integrate the processes. Yes, hello, I'm Konstantin, and I speak on behalf of the customer. I agree with what the previous people said. From the very beginning, you speak about scanners, but these VM products have been in existence for a long time. And I would like to join the previous speaker who said, what would be the difference of VOC from just one good vulnerability management expert using Solara, Max Patrum VM, Envision VM, Tenable Security Center, maybe some people have it, or Kaspersky Security Center. It also has vulnerability management. You will get information about all of the vulnerabilities. So what would one expert be different from the entire VOC, and what would be the roles in the VOC? If you find such an expert who will not just do the scanning, but also researches and prioritizes these vulnerabilities, it has custom filters. Do you actually trust this prioritization? But you diminish the achievements of those people who created Max Patrum. They have great competence, great experience. So they say that these COEs should be removed in the first place and others later. Should I really argue with them? Well, you don't need to argue. The critical COEs should be eradicated timely and rapidly. But if you have some kind of a financial app and it has a vulnerability in business logic, and none of the scanners highlights this, but still you have a person who researches this, the vulnerability eradication should be conducted by someone else. It would be much more critical rather than having the red RC vulnerability handling. But what about the roles? One person will find the vulnerabilities, another one will send it to IT, the third one will keep on tracking how it's executed. Yes, I think it's teamwork. One person looks for and researches new vulnerabilities and does this forward-looking segment. What are the new things that come up? What are the new vulnerabilities that spring up? SOC is supposed to do that, but they can track everything. So they are checking the information about the so-called vulnerability market, like what is available on the dark net, etc. Normal experts who handle vulnerabilities in this way really exist, and they have existed a long time. Yeah, another question. You say that it looks like that there's just a SOC and vulnerability expert in the company. But what about pen tester? Pen testers also exist, and should they have any competencies by VOC? But not in all of the companies, they have their own pen testers. Integrators have them, and such pen tests do run. But purple teaming is not always achieved because it's a standalone costly service. But in terms of the use of the basic automation, it takes place, it exists, and these things should be managed by someone. You can combine it with the effort of one man, one person. Maybe it's possible, and some people do it, but it's preferable that we have a small team of such experts who would handle all these things, a team. Then it would be nice just to take a look at the business process. What would be the difference between one expert's work outcome and the team's experts' work outcome? Okay, thank you very much. It was an excellent presentation, my colleagues. I think it's just like on the podium when you show a new fashion collection. You can't wear it in the street, but it's fashionable, and that's how we need to treat it. Thanks very much to the speaker. So we need to have this... I'm sorry for dropping this. I'm going to present you with a book. There are two books to present for the best. That's about Linux and eBPF. Linux command prompt and eBPF. Linux is known to everyone, but eBPF is going to go right here to the author of the best question. I think your question was the best because it was, very questionable, but it created an argument, and that's why your question was the best. Thank you.